Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 11th of March, comes to you from London. Quite a mixed picture in markets this morning. Interestingly, the situation in the Middle East, we put out a morning call report to our energy clients, and it's mostly a mixed picture, and markets are stuck in these ranges. So this report goes out every morning at 8 o'clock to clients, and we look at these markets in more detail. But the interesting thing is that we are effectively stuck in these ranges, and we've got quite good upside targets on gas. We're seeing gas recovering, but we are in quite tight ranges. And certainly looking at crude oil, the interesting thing here, if we look at the shorter term chart, we're stuck in the 80s basically, and that's below 80 we would be bearish crude, and above 90 we would be bullish again. So whilst the long-term picture is still one of bullish because we've broken key resistance levels, it's interesting to see that we are testing the cloud, and that's the key thing at the moment. So we have a picture of just waiting and seeing what's going to develop in the Middle East, which is, of course, having an impact on markets. So we look at currencies first of all. We're seeing that the dollar has been the strong move, but that is unwinding now. We're back below the cloud, so other currencies are coming to the fore. And if it's quite interesting if you see markets that are being hit. The Indian rupee, for example, that's been one very clear trend. Affected by the oil price as a big importer from the Middle East. But this has been going on for several months, where the dollar has been relatively weak against major currencies, and the rupee has been even weaker, the dollar buying even more rupee despite its weakness. On the other hand, we've seen currencies like South African rand, that's got downside targets, so that's continuing. Train tracks, I call those. So we've had a bit of a respite here with the dollar being the strong currency recently, but we're still below the cloud on the lagging line. And that next level is 1580 on the rand, 1570. That's going to be the level to watch. Once we break that, we look to the next downside target. Of course, you could go to the shorter term targets, and that's where you will see those prices coming through. Looking at some other strong currencies, Australian dollar, of course, has been a real beneficiary, just activated an upside target, some 21% higher. So that's really significant there. And so despite the US dollar weakness, Australian dollar is looking really strong. That's interest rates expectation in Australia. And even on the 60-minute, we've given an upside target as well. Looking at the Chinese renminbi, this is really interesting when you look at the long-term chart. We see here that we really have broken lower on the renminbi. So that's a really key factor there. And if we look at that chart, we can see that we've broken that key level on the renminbi. So China's currency stronger against the US dollar buying less renminbi. So that's an interesting one. Bitcoin still looking bearish on that daily chart. We will see fluctuations on the 60-minute. And bond markets relatively sanguine. We've seen Italy ticking up this morning. That's not looking so good. We've got an upside target potentially there, some 4.3%, and breaking the range, making multiple month highs. So that's one standout. And Japan, of course, was the worry recently at the start of the year. We have a downside target that was met, another downside target that probably we can discount because we're above the cloud and we've got a new upside target. We come back to those levels, the markets will be worried about the Japanese bond market, the most indebted market in the world. Now, looking at indices, we've got the futures in the US. The S&P future is relatively flat. We are struggling to make a new high. That NASDAQ, we haven't activated the downside target. We have intraday, but the high for the NASDAQ was back in October, and so we haven't really yet seen a fall away. So it's holding up despite everything that's happening on in the world. FTSE is down So we are the longer term, the medium term picture is bullish, but we have these shorter term targets on the 60-minute below the cloud. So we are seeing FTSE falling away. We'll look at the stocks in a minute. And we're seeing the DAX in Germany, that's down around 1%. So even though we've got an upside target recovery, we are seeing that's much flatter than the UK market, and it is starting to just test that cloud. 2300 is pretty important there. So keeping an eye on that. Japan continued its rise, even though we've got a downside target. China is up 0.25%, yet to activate an upside target there. India quite hard hit. That we talked about the currency, the oil, the affected by oil price, and so it is really just India is falling away there. The Aussie market actually had made new highs, but we are now seeing that we're just coming back, bouncing on the cloud, so not so bad. Gold is pulling back this morning. It's waiting. We didn't quite get to that upside target. A slightly bearish confirmation the way we didn't get there. Lower high, just waiting to see really if we make a lower low. We are bullish above the cloud, waiting to see if we can kick in another target. You can watch the 1 minute chart if you're trading gold, of course. Looking at the US market, a lot of the bellwethers, the defensives were up yesterday, although the chart there for 3M is not great. Caterpillar is a much better looking chart. That's the short-term chart. If we look at the daily chart, still have train tracks going up. That's what I like to see on a chart. But really quite a mixed picture. And if we look at the FTSE this morning, that's again really quite interesting. We can rank by the performers. We can see that we've only got around, you can just renumber the columns, which I normally do just to see how many are up. So we've got 17 stocks that are up out of 100. Even though we've got a bit of a bounce there, that's not a great looking chart at all. So we are seeing most of the underperformers. Looking at Sainsbury's, that's one that's above the cloud, but no clear targets. AB Foods, not a great chart. Below the cloud, downside target yet to be activated. And of course, you can go to the 60-minute charts to look at these. Look at the underperformers. There's lots of them this morning. Legal & General, that's really fallen away. If we look at the 60-minute chart, downside targets that were given back at the start of the month, and so 265, we're now nudging 245. You have to decide, do you want to live with that 10% downside? Looking again, just downside targets. There's a lot of stocks that are doing this. This is quite interesting that we're seeing lots of stocks just short-term selling off. So you do have to just watch that. Medium term, if you're longer term, then below the cloud with downside targets is also not great. And we can just go down the list. Metalin, we're seeing here a downside target nearly activated below the cloud, breaking a key level at 40. BAE Systems, of course, has been a standout with everything that's going on in the Middle East. So, we have to look at that as certainly. And we know oil stocks have been quite strong as well. Banks, quite interestingly, we're seeing that upside targets, but falling below the cloud. Do you want to wait and see whether we go there? You could look at the 60-minute and see, have we got a recovery target? Yes, we have. Do we get back above the cloud? We had those downside targets kicking in on the 60-minute. And now, so you may not be a very short-term investor, but you're just wanting to make decisions about your holdings by looking at the daily charts. So really quite key. EasyJet still being affected by what's been happening in air travel. So you really can't ignore the effect that even though the market looks quite strong, and that's been driven by the large cap oil stocks, we are seeing quite a few stocks falling away. Do keep an eye on the targets. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, hang in there, watch the targets, watch the oil price. Bye for now.